So, I guess this is our honorable mentions for albums that came out in the year 2013, if you follow the Christian calendar. So, I guess we're going to go through.
What other calendar wouldn't you follow?
The Aztec.
So, who's going first? Honorable mentions. Let's
Fine.
talk about good music.
I'll go through mine first, because I only have a handful. My honorable mentions are War of Will, Battlecross, Havoc, Unnatural Selection, and The Black Dahlia Murder, Into the Everblack. There's not really any reason why these albums didn't make it. It's just that I felt there were better albums that fit my musical taste personally that came out this year. And, I mean, honestly, these are kind of the only albums I really listen to, plus my top 10, so that's, my honorable mentions there. So.
Alright, I have a few here. My honorable mentions, first of all, I want to go all the way back to earlier in the year when we reviewed Within the Ruins. And I didn't like it. I didn't care for it. It wasn't bad, but I didn't care for it. Throughout the year, I've given it a few more listens and a few more tries. And I'm not saying I came around to put it in my top 10, but I came around enough to say that it wasn't as bad as I said. So I'll give an honorable mention to their album. Vanna, next off. I didn't even know that they were putting out an album this year. I haven't heard much of this band, aside of them touring a lot, and it surprised me. Like, I didn't even know, like I said, an album came out. I found it and listened to it. It has a nice edge to it. Again, not good enough to put it into my top 10, but it surprised me. I think it's worth the mention. Next, Katy Perry's album Prism. I'd like to give that an honorable mention, just because it's not something that I think I would definitely include in my top 10. It almost made the cut. But I like Katy Perry. I like her music. I think it was an overall good album. Not as good as was it Teenage Dream? Pretty sure that's I feel like it's something Dream. I'm bad with album names, unless it's written down right in front of me. But honorable mention to her. Next, I have a couple things here. Explosions in the Sky, the soundtrack to the movie Prince Avalanche. It's such a good soundtrack. This band puts out albums. It's not like they're just a soundtrack band. This instrumental, subtle background music that's just so good. I don't know how to explain it. It's so nice to listen to. It's something that's easy on the ears. I definitely recommend that. Also, the album Paramore, from the band Paramore, narrowly missed my top 10. I like how they experimented more on this album, I think. They definitely showed off, at least Haley, what she could do, and Taylor with what he could. I think with the Farrow brothers leaving, I'm pretty sure that's the names, I think the rest of the band really experimented a lot and did their own thing. And cool album. Lastly, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly. I think it's Deaf Heaven, the album Sunbather. I just listened to it this week. And if I listen to it more, it may be in my top 10, but it is very, very good. With bands that I've been getting into now, Russian Circles, well, for a while now, and Explosions in the Sky, bands like that, I think that it's pretty cool to listen to Sunbather. It's very relaxing, genuinely listenable album. And it has character to it. The vocals are, they're their own vocals, but they're good album, very good album. I feel like with more time it could have been my top 10.
Alright, so I've listened to so many good albums this year. I could have easily made a top 50 albums of the year, but I kept mine at 20, so I have 37 honorable mentions. I'm not really going to talk about much of them. I'm just going to run through them. Skeleton Witch, Serpents Unleashed, Evil, Skull, Exhumed with Necrocracy, Dark Tranquility, Construct, The Dillinger Escape Plan, One of Us is the Killer, Tesseract, Altered State, Era, Augment, Rings of Saturn, Danger. You know they started streaming that last year. It didn't really come out till this year. Whatever. It doesn't really matter. Catalepsy with Autopsychosis. That was actually the first album I reviewed this year, and it still punches you in the balls. Jungle Rot with Terror Regime, Diamond Plate with Pulse, Intronaut with Habitual Levitations, Children of Bodom, Halo of Blood, Scale of Summit to Migration, Tear with Valkyria, I hope I said that right. Focus Burns Red, Rescue and Restore, Battlecross with War of Will, Devil Wears Prada, 818, Chimera, Crown of Phantoms, Last Chance to Reason with Level 3, Watain, The Wild Hunt, Broken Hope, Omen of Disease, Cataclysm, Waiting for the End to Come, Deicide into Minds of Evil, Fit for an Autopsy, Hellbound, Monomar, Deceiver of the Gods, Devourment, Conceived as Sewage, Halloween, I forget their album name, yeah, it was alright. Heaven Shall Burn with Veto, Ancients with Heart of Oak, Dark Summer Within Tongues, and Hypocrisy with End of Disclosure. That's my honorable mentions. All these albums are fantastic. Just listen to all of them. They're too good to not mention them at all. So yeah, that's why all of those are there. Good shit, man. This year's been great for music.
Taz.
Let's talk about our disappointments.
Mine
There's a few disappointments in 2013.
I have the big major ones, which is Super Collider. That was by Megadeth. Big disappointment. It's, a very under par crap album. I don't know, and if you watch the music video to Super Collider, it just makes it so much worse. Like, it drags it down even further. Like, sometimes music video helps, it doesn't. Temper Bullet for My Valentine, but then again, I knew that was gonna suck, so maybe it's not a disappointment. It did exactly as good as I thought it would. But they did come back with Raising Hell. I'll give them that. But that one, Warbringer 4, what was it? Empire Collapse was disappointment. I was expecting a balls out thrash, Warbringer album, and instead, you get this album that doesn't know what it is. It's punk sometimes, and then it's death metal, and then it's thrash. It's just really, 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 really weird. And so, and then also, a little bit of a minor disappointment. I think it's Five Finger Death Punch album. Is it The Wrong Side of Heaven, The Righteous Side of Hell? With, when they put out Lift Me Up, I was like, this could be cool. Because that was a cool song. It's a groovy song, and I really enjoyed it. But the rest of the album just didn't live up. And neither did the second part. Did not live up to that song. So, disappointment in my eyes. That's really the only disappointments I had for this year.
Alright, I have 4 disappointments throughout this year. I'll start with Blur of Osiris. Okay, your best guitarist and this critically acclaimed musical genius, whatever, leaves your band, or gets kicked out, whatever, there's a departure. And you put out your next album, which felt like they took forever or whatever. I guess money, all that stuff went into it. But they finally put out an album, and I think, alright, this will be motivation for them to, show people that, hey, we don't need Jason Richardson. But they did not show people that they didn't need Jason Richardson. A lot of it was just exactly what I thought, the absence of Jason Richardson, where there were just palm mutes and no, cool riffs or leads or anything like that. That embodies what was missing of Jason Richardson. Next I have I Wrestled a Bear Once. Don't get me wrong, Courtney LaPlante is an excellent vocalist. I think singing, she blows Krista out of the water. Krista Cameron, singing-wise. Screams, I felt a lot of them were forced, winded, just didn't, there wasn't this excess of it, where you can hold it for a while. Hold a scream for, a solid, couple of seconds. But I think that, it's just the first album with this band. I think they may get better. Production, I just did not feel it. They have calmed down a little bit. You'll always say, like, because they've grown as musicians, this is what they're into now. You can't say, oh man, I missed their first album. I don't want to be one of those people, but I like the crazy, sporadic attitude of their first album that I feel isn't much there anymore. Also, I have Oceano. Now, an example of a song that sort of embodies what I thought about this album. The song Embrace Nothingness. Instrumentally, musically, it was freaking awesome. I think Embrace Nothingness is a great song. But the vocals, Adam trying this new whisper, low talking thing, I just didn't feel it. I mean, I don't know. It just wasn't me. It wasn't feeling it. It's cool if they're doing their own thing, doing what they want to do on the album, but I just wasn't feeling it. And that sort of says it about the album. It's cool for what it is. People can do whatever they want. I'm sure other people dig it, and the band's doing their thing, but it's just not... I wasn't feeling it, I guess. And that... I was expecting, some, beastly skullfuck of an album, but it's just... A lot of it, I wasn't feeling it. Lastly, I'll go to August Burns Red, Rescue and Restore. This album was a big disappointment. Where there were 4 or 5 songs on the album, Beauty and Tragedy, Fault Line, the long instrumental song, mostly instrumental, I forget the name of it, track 3, I'm bad with names, don't get on my case about that. But there are about 4 or 5 songs on this album that I thought were cool, they're, pretty cool. They sounded great. Like Beauty and Tragedy is one of the best songs of this year, in my opinion. But I feel like they still have not broken that metalcore mold that August Burns Red was a big part of, going way back to when they first started. But now that they still have that mold around them. I feel like they need to break out of that and pull a Whitechapel, pull a The Devil Wears Prada, and make their own damn sound. I mean, I still hear that just generic metalcore sort of sound to them. Yeah, they're way better musicians than any metalcore band out there. They're amazing. JB and Brent are just sick, and Matt too. But I feel like bringing in a violin or a cello on every song, that's they overused that. They overused those parts in the songs where it slowed down or it stopped and Jake started talking, or I just feel like trying some new things and over-trying them doesn't make up for, it doesn't substitute for breaking your mold, So I was largely disappointed, but I'm half disappointed, half honorable mention with that album.
You hear that Lancaster chant vibe in them.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Alright, I have 10 disappointments. Number 10, I had Havoc with Unnatural Selection. While this album was just good, and I just jammed it the other day, I'm like, yeah, there's some good shit. Waste of Life is a great song. And they improved in many categories. I was expecting something a little bit more thrashier, a little bit more on the heavier side. And I was just slightly let down with this, but it's still a good album. Number 9, I had Avenged Sevenfold. Now, Hail to the King is an okay song, but this album is just a gigantic bore fest. I just cannot. You don't feel anything from a lot of these songs. It's very generic. And the reason why I have this on here is because Nightmare was actually a pretty decent album. But this was just, it was a turd in the bowl. Number 8, I had Amon Amarth. Well, I just gave this album an honorable mention, and it's still a good album. I was expecting something up to quality and up to snuff with their past ones with Surtur Rising, Twilight of the Gods, with Odin on Her Side. It just wasn't quite up there in my mind, but it was still good. I was just slightly let down with this. Number 7, Stone Sour with the House of Golden Bones Part 2. What's a song off this album?
I don't know.
There you go. Part 1 was amazing. Part 2, I don't know. Number 6. I mean, you can't have a disappointments. I mean, this is kind of like a disappointment / worst albums of the year. Bullet for My Valentine with Temper. This was just awful to listen to. This could be the worst album of the year if this was a balls out worst albums of the year list. This was awful in about 50 million categories. It's just. Number 5, Oceano. I was expecting, like Sam, something that was just skull crushing and just. This. Don't get me wrong. This is a heavy album, but the songwriting was just kind of, man. It was just overall, man. They really have not broken out from that deathcore mold. They really haven't evolved at all. And I kind of feel bad for Adam Warren because he is an incredible vocalist. And he improved on this album, I feel. He got more fucking brutal, which is hard to believe. It was okay. Number 4, Ed Warbringer. Like Keith, I was expecting something that just ripped my face off like their first 3 albums. And this album just didn't, like he said, did not know what it wanted to be. It was kind of weird. A lot of the riffs, a lot of the songs I didn't really feel much from. I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't horrible, but it was just kind of mediocre in my mind. Number 3, now we're getting to the good stuff. Born of Osiris. Born of Osiris needs to take another look at themselves and tell me what do they see. Because this was awful in my mind. It really was. The only song I liked, I don't even remember the name. It's like the 3rd or 4th track. And I've listened to this many times. I've tried so hard to get into it because I look at the album art and I'm like, that's kind of neat. And then I'm like, but there's like shit written all over this disc. I don't want to buy this.
It's like one big palm mute.
I was literally going to say that. It's one giant palm mute with a couple sweeps. I don't care what anyone says. That is not amazing. Anyone can sit there and take a guitar with open string and go. It's just like, what the fuck is this? You know?
Yeah. I could do that. I suck at guitar.
Exactly. It's just, it's so boring. And I know that their next album is going to sound exactly like this one. And to discover is actually good. I went back and listened to that again. I'm like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. Because Jason Richardson wrote riffs, wrote some really amazing solos, and Lee over here, with his gingerness, is just like taking a shit. And it's just not good. This is an awful album. Don't listen to it. In my mind, an even more awful album is Flesh God Apocalypse with Labyrinth. I swear, every solo on here is exactly the fucking same. They are all slow, and these held notes, they're all in the same key, with a blast beat behind them, and some tremolo pick guitars, and then some epic orchestration comes in, and some brutal fucking Italian vocals come in, and then that's the end of the song. And then the next song starts off, tremolo picking, blast beat, maybe a really more upbeat, really heavy palm mute riff, blast beat, solo, epic orchestration the whole way through the song, done. Rinse and repeat, and you have this album. This is, I can't describe. The first EP and the first album from this band were amazing because they did not focus on trying to be the most epic shit you would ever hear in your life. And now they are just repeating themselves. Agony was agony to listen to. This, I feel like I'm in a labyrinth of bullshit and I cannot get out. It's horrible.
What?
It's just
bullshit.
it's terrible. I just really don't like this album.
The only song that's even worth on this album is Minotaur, and then even that, it's only for
And that's the only slight variation.
And that's
in
just
that
that's
entire
just the
album.
intro. Just the intro.
Yeah.
Is
If you want epic, symphonic, melodic death metal, go listen to Septic Flesh. They do everything
better.
5 million times better. And I don't even want to hear otherwise. In number 1, Megadeth. Megadeth, oh my gosh, don't even get me started on Super Collider. Me and Keith kind of listened to this the other day, and we still laughed. And it's funny, because the only good song on here isn't even their song. It's that cover of that Thin Lizzy song. I forget what it is. Cold Sweat. That's a really good cover, and that's a great song to listen to. I like that cover a lot. But just the rest is, I almost want to buy this album to wipe my ass with it and then send it to Dave Mustaine's house. It's awful. Dave Mustaine sounds terrible. They got David Draymond on it, which that's terrible in itself. You could barely understand what the hell he was saying. And then Dave Mustaine comes back and dance in the rain. You know?
When you feel
like there's no one around. In Super Collider, the song is awful. Is there solos on this album?
No, I don't think so.
It's nothing but held notes that sound like they're fucking farts. They're terrible. I hate this album, man. This album gets me fired up. This year was great for music, but it had some fucking turds. Some huge, huge turds.
Feces. Lots of feces.
Any last thoughts? Oh, and Winds of Plague's new album was hilarious.
Wasn't disappointment. Wasn't disappointment. Expected to be that way,
Expected,
but
yes. Last thoughts?
Impending doom, but no, never mind. I'll forget about it
Attila?
by next year.
Attila.
I expected that to be shit, and it was shit. That band is just such a fucking joke. And if they want to say like, "Oh, haters don't like what we're doing," you know, maybe we should take the fucking message.
What did Chris Project say? If this album doesn't blow up, he's gonna quit making music.
I wish.
I
it
really
would blow
hope-
up. I wish he would blow up.
I hope this album just like doesn't sell. A
I
single
really
copy.
want him to quit making music.
Shout out of the year goes to.
Your mom.
Yeah.
Serious shout out of the year goes to.
Well,
What do you mean?
Just any shout out to anyone in music.
Shout out to Conrad Kupiak. I think I said his name.
Oh,
His
that guy.
guitarist at Diamond Plate. Coolest guy I've met all year.
Oh shit! You put me on the spot. Shout out
That's what
to
it's supposed to be.
shout out to Matt Heafy for being awesome live and flicking his tongue every 5 seconds.
Shout out to Ronnie Radke for being trash. Still.
Yeah.
Anything that you're really sad that happened this year?
Jeff Hanneman dying, of course, but
That's probably my biggest one. But I have another one. I'm sad that Fatal Impulse broke up.
oh.
Ah!
What about you?
I don't know what I'm sad about. Kind of sucks that Bleeding Through broke up.
Yeah.
That's about it, though. Jeff Hanneman.
Dying.
Yes.
Joey George is leaving Slipknot, which I guess just happened.
Fuck Joey George. He's so overrated. I mean,
Thanks for
seriously.
Yep.
Seriously, guys.
Bye.